Hello, good morning.
Morning, how are you?
I am well. How are you?
Good.
Um, so let me see. I think I need to pin you or spotlight you.
Could you, is this a participatory meeting where they might be participating? Okay, then to spotlight me, I can't get them bigger. So if they could pin me when they get on,
Oh, okay.
I need to, and then if you could give me multiple pin ability, then I can have them there because how many people are going to be in the meeting?
Somewhere between 5 and 10.
Okay, still, it gets all small and I can't see them. Thank you.
Yeah, I
And
think I gave you permission to multi-pin. So
when they get on, I'll pin both of. There's just two, Cesar Mendez and Susan Riley.
mhm.
Okay. When they get on, I'll pin them, and then if they want to join in the conversation, we'll be there. And then if
Oh,
you could let them know to pin me for their ability to see me bigger.
will do.
Yeah. Thank you
And you've
so
seen
much.
the agenda for the meeting?
I did get the agenda and I did look it
Okay.
over. Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
I haven't received a copy of the presentation from Renata. I would share that with you
Um,
if I did, but
I always appreciate that. Yes. Anything you think that would throw me, any vocabulary that would be used that I wouldn't understand from like Russia's?
oh boy, the when Renata's presenting about the environmental scan, she's going to be talking about the participatory planning and decision making. She might just call that PPDM. It also gets sometimes called a lit review.
Ah,
And then there might be like journal titles and stuff thrown in there.
okay. Thank you.
Mhm. This is actually the first time we've met in several months. So
I have a lot to cover.
yeah,
Do you have your meetings in person anymore, or are they all online?
these have always been online because I'm in New York and Diane's in New York, but Sarah and a lot of the other people are in Chicago.
Okay.
And Renata's in Minnesota. So we're all over the place.
Yes. Isn't that nice? Okay, why is the newsletter called MailChimp?
Oh, that's just the name of the company
Oh,
that does our newsletter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cute.
That would be funny if that was what we named our MailChimp, our newsletter.
I know. All right. Okay, good. One click too many. Sorry. Darn it. One day I'll get the hang of all this technology.
My favorite thing to do is when I'm in the chat, I'll go to close the chat and then I'll close my whole Zoom window. And I'm just like, awesome.
That's right. Awesome. I know. Oh, goodness. And I do like the addition of this to my life. It's got its problems. I know. Sometimes I feel like I'm a little too old to get it all in there.
Oh, never.
Never. Okay, good, good, good.
It actually it comforts me that I work with co-op students that are in their early 20s, and a lot of them struggle with Zoom as well. So
Yay.
it's definitely not an age thing.
Okay. There you go. There you go. There you go. Yeah. I think about when COVID started and we all went online and I didn't know anything about it and I was trying to do it. And now I look back and think, well, why didn't I get this done? Why didn't I get, and I'm like, right, because I was so stressed. I just couldn't think of anything else.
Right. Yeah.
Looking
Yeah.
things
You're like,
up.
why wasn't I more productive during that time?
Yes.
You're like, oh, wait, it was the
Oh,
looming, the looming plague.
yes, exactly. Oh my God. Looking things up. Which camera is right? Should I buy a desktop? Can I use my Mac? And people giving out of the goodness of their heart presentations to us interpreters and saving it and watching it again. Fun. All right.
Hi, Nancy. Lisa.
Hi.
And I think you're on here twice. Your otter is connected. Hey, Sarah.
Morning. Well, let's see, we're just about 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock in Eastern.
Yeah. I'm just waiting for Diane.
Yep.
And Renata, of course. Oh, there she is.
Renata. It's a couple people showing up. Hey, Renata.
Morning, Ann. Hi, Janet.
Hey.
Hi, this is Ann Carey calling in.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Morning.
Good. Happy Monday, everyone.
So, yes. Good morning. I see Diane is here. Diane, were you gonna, let's see. The agenda says you were gonna welcome everybody.
So how are we doing? We got people pretty much signed up, Katrina.
I think
Yeah, I
so.
think so.
It's time
Yeah.
to get started then? Well, great. So I'll just start by saying good morning and happy fall to everybody. It's been a while since we've been together, but glad that today happened and that we have a chance to catch up as well as to, find out what's happening with our updates and in particular, looking forward to Renata's presentation. So Sarah, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, so update. Actually, since I'm writing our semi-annual report all morning, it's fresh in my mind. So we've just now started year 4 of our 5-year grant. And we said that during our sort of course of action, we would be developing and piloting interprofessional, educational, and practice experiences around the health and healthcare of people with intellectual disabilities at the 5 core partner institutions and spread them. So that has happened. We have developed and piloted programming at the 5 core institutions plus others. So the Golsano Institute, there's been most of the funding comes from the Special Olympics with some funding from this project for parts of it. The interprofessional core curriculum and the IDD workforce was implemented in the spring and summer of 23. And the report in July was that at that point, more than about 450 students had taken the program with improvements, their perceived improvements. And it was piloted at St. John Fisher, Damon University, UC Davis, right? Rush, and University of Minnesota. And it's now been upgraded. It's really like I thought a whole level above, the new program, and it's available on the Special Olympics website. You can certainly contact any of us if you have difficulty finding it, and it's available to be implemented widely. I know we are right now have sort of gotten it in where we'll have a flyer out at the university, and students can go in through their Canvas, their own Canvas sites to to get at the program. So I think it can be used in whole, in part. It's out there. So in any, questions, whatever, any of us can help you. Certainly, Goal-san or otherwise, we can help people to get into it. And
Sarah, I would
Sarah,
just mention that it's free. It is free.
yes, it's free.
It's, and right now
That's a big issue. It's free.
Yeah, it's free. It's called Introduction to Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. And presently 12 universities have adopted it. So that's where we are right now.
Sarah, this is Ann. Is it obvious when we go into the Special Olympics website how to access it?
It wasn't to me particularly. I used the link that I got from the Special Olympics. Just going directly to the website, I had to search for it.
Yeah, I can share the, Special Olympics has told me we could, the more the merrier we share it with. Yeah, they just are asking that if you use it, you just provide some information so they can report to the CDC, for example, and the Florida Gulf Coast University is using it. When we're finished with this, Katrina and I will send the link to everyone. But Special Olympics at the same time has built a new LMS system too. So that's where it's loaded. But if it is problematic, all you need to do is reach out to me or to Sarah, and we'll make the connections with you through Ann Williams. Okay?
Yeah, no, that'd be great.
And we
Thank
haven't
you.
launched it yet. And we haven't actually launched it yet, probably next week, but it seemed, we haven't, at least it seemed to work when we put it into student view, that once we send a QR code to students, they can get into it through their Canvas accounts, and that we can actually load up one module at a time into separate slots.
Wow,
So
that's great. I can't wait to see it. Yeah, great.
Yeah,
and
I put the link in the chat.
Yeah, you can, there it is. She put it in the chat.
Okay.
We're intending, and I think you can do with it what you want, but there's some very nice reflection questions in each module. So when students want some micro-credential from us, we're asking them to comment on do a reflection on one of those reflection questions. Which
this would be great to link to the AACN website.
It certainly would.
If you can.
I think absolutely we can. So when we produced these modules, the learning modules, we didn't have a whole lot of money, but we certainly had wonderful subject matter experts who developed the different modules, the content. For example, Brian, Avery, and Renata Ticha are part of our PATH work. Did the module on the social model of disability. But anyway, the content was powerful. People really liked it. The pilot evaluation data was very good. So Special Olympics then partnered with an organization, national leader in instructional design, named ELB, who we've also had an opportunity to work with in our Golisano Institute. They're amazing partners in this work. And ELB, I'm going to use something my mother would have said, dialed it up. Big time, dialed it up to make it much more interactive, and much more engaging, I should say. And it is interprofessional, and it's for anybody who has an interest in learning about, sort of an introduction to intellectual and developmental disabilities. So it's a nice way to get started with this work, and also hopefully we'll get more and more partners who start with this work and then begin to develop it with a bit more focus, perhaps on special needs, health inequities, those kinds of things. But that's where we are with it.
Thank you.
So Katrina, could you spotlight the interpreter so that when we have the recording, that should be front and center?
Sure.
So then the other thing, at Rush, we developed what we call an advanced interprofessional service learning experience. We can call it ISLE. And there were two, a different one that were available to students who had completed our year-long basic interprofessional course, or it's a 2-trimester course. And in the original course, students partner with older adults to develop wellness goals and action plans. So in this advanced learning experience, we've partnered with a community-based organization that provides residential services to people with intellectual disabilities, and it's they serve Chicago South and West Side, so it's the Rush core neighborhoods, meets out the mission of the university or as part of the mission to improve the health in those communities. So we partnered with this community-based organization. We recruited community health mentors with intellectual disabilities who are residential service users, along with the staff person, and then teams of interprofessional students worked with them to develop wellness goals with action plans over 3 telehealth visits. So we've now completed 3 terms of this. We've had a total of 59 students, 21 community health mentors. I think there were a total of 56 telehealth visits. All of the mentors developed wellness goals. Most of them were, you might be totally surprised, around better nutrition or things like drinking more water, less soda, and exercise, with some being things like going to the library regularly for mental health and so forth. So this is now, we're just starting our 4th term of it. We did submit an abstract on this to MNRS. We'll see if they take it, and we'll be looking to publish on the 1st year. At University of Illinois, they implemented an interprofessional virtual, well, it's both virtual and in-person simulation experience with standardized patients with disabilities, including intellectual disabilities. There was a cohort, I think, of about 10 who were trained by theater coaches. It was originally nursing, pharmacy, and dentistry, nurse practitioners, I think, and then it's also now been implemented, or it's in the course of being implemented at Temple, and they are, working on upgrading the scenarios based on the first experience, and it is being, is going to be implemented again. The students and instructors and so forth are being trained in the health advocacy curriculum. And anyway, so there were about 80 in the first round. Also, Villanova developed a standardized patient with intellectual disabilities virtual scenario. It was also implemented in collaboration with St. Joseph's University. There were also about 80 students who participated. And since Villanova had already had standardized patients with disabilities, this was extending and based on that previous experience. And they're also in touch with some others who might want to implement this. So, and then of course, University of Minnesota has been very involved with helping to analyze the data and have these things implemented. The other thing that's happened is we did finally get a manuscript off for review of our scoping review. It was 183 articles in the end. We used the framework it's called Framework for Teaching Health Professional Students About Social Determinants of Health, but it very well matched the things that we found. Big surprise, since this social determinants of health so impact this population. But things like experiential, recommended in that framework, experiential learning. Majority of articles had some sort of experiential learning involved. That it should be interprofessional. I'd have to pull up. That certainly was not the majority of articles. Competency based. I don't have the thing right in front of me. Renata, but I thought it was something like about 60% were competency based. We would have thought more. The whole issue of intersectionality with race, ethnicity, so forth, there was not one article discussed the issue. Very few even collected demographic data on either whoever they were, the target population, or students, or whichever kind of health professionals they were working with. That was a big gap in the literature. There were certainly, when you looked at experiential, there was a whole variety. There was service learning, certainly clinical experiences. That's a major issue in the health professions. So straightforward clinical experiences and service learning and other things like case studies and role play and so forth were involved in that. But certainly both the interprofessional and the just lack of any discussion of intersectionality was a huge issue. Something like about 5 to maybe 6 or 7% of the programs use some model specifically other than medical model. Another big gap is pretty much if you're not consciously using another model, pretty much the default is the medical model. So that was not used well. Interesting, about 20% of the programs had some sort of involvement of people with intellectual disabilities and or family members in either the development, implementation, or evaluation. Anyway, hopefully that the manuscripts in review, we haven't heard back from them yet. So I think that's about covers it. We're hoping we'll get it back soon. I'm hoping I'll talk it up. We'll see if it shows up by the end of the meeting. So old business. Well, certainly there was the frequency of these meetings. I know with the other, both the measurement, I'm blanking on this particular action network, with both the measurement and the education and practice policy, they're planning to have meetings in September and October, but then because of the holidays, November and December, and they're later in the month, not having another one till January. Any thoughts on that?
We've been meeting every other month as
Okay.
that's what we have been, but I do know that I recognize that there are some points in time during the year that it's really hard for people, their calendars are pretty packed. So I like the idea of the holiday season. November and December is perhaps not a time for meetings, but maybe what we could do is think this through and send a proposal to the members of the CAN to see, what it is that they would like to do in terms of meetings, and then based on what the committee thinks, then we'll reschedule. Katrina and I can work on rescheduling it. Okay.
Okay. I know with the other two, they both of those, there were people they wanted to hear from. There's presentations coming up at both of those groups, but they, because also they typically meet towards the end of the month. November and December were out, so they're doing like September, October, and then probably January.
Okay.
So it looks like then that's old business. Was there any other old business? If others are interested, I know later this it's 20, I think it's the 27th that we're having it, but the Kimberly Hartman from Quinnipiac University is presenting in the Education, Practice, and Policy Action Network. She's the Director of Interprofessional Education at Quinnipiac, and they've done quite a bit of work there to integrate disability content into their work. So she'll be talking about that. And then in October, it's going to be senior moment. From Temple University. I'm totally blanking. My senior moment is hit me.
Yeah, the woman who's the simulation specialist from Temple, who was at
Right,
UIC.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember her name, but I certainly remember
I'll look it up.
her work
It's
at UIC, and now she's at Temple.
Are you talking about Sue Kilroy?
You got it.
Yeah, you do. All
I'm
right.
glad there's somebody else who can step in.
Somebody else is
Not
not having a
briefly.
senior moment. So
Yeah, she'll be presenting at the meeting in October. And then the measurement, boy, I'm totally blanking. I'll look it up.
Lauren Clark.
Right.
Lauren Clark from UCLA is presenting.
Yes.
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
And Rebecca Weston is going to be presenting at the Advocate Advisory meeting.
Right. She has a new program, a Disability 101, that's just being implemented and really would like some input from advocates. So we're very helpful. We're very glad we can assist her with that.
She's at the University of Maryland. Do I remember
Correct.
that? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Because that's where Ann Williams is from. You know, that's her alma mater. And I think she's adjunct faculty there at the University of Maryland. So Ann Williams, by the way, is the vice president for health education, help the athletes program, you know, at Special Olympics International. She's a doctor of nursing practice, pediatric nurse practitioner.
And then the October measurement group, it's going to be Laura Van Pembroke from Rush, who's she's done quite a bit of work on how to measure ableism. So among other things, they looked at occupational therapy students from beginning and into program. From the beginning to the end, explicit bias went down, but implicit bias did not change. And it was, I have to look at the article again, but it was about 40% somewhat strongly implicitly biased, even at the end of the program. So where I guess the implication being we're not doing very well in when we're educating at least that group of healthcare professional students at overcoming ableism. And I think they're probably better than nursing, just my impression. So I think that'll be a very interesting presentation for people who are looking at how to measure ableism. If you look at what I can find in the literature where it's talking about measuring ableism, it's Carly Friedman and Laura Van Pembroke are almost on almost every article. So I think that'll be of interest to people.
Yeah. By the way, Sarah, you know, Carly Friedman has a really interesting article on a tool to evaluate the social determinants of health for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, you know, which we know that that's a major barrier that we need to address for that in terms of health equity for this population. But her work on identifying what particular impact the social determinants of health have on this population. It's really, it's very, very nice tool, very nice work. Yeah. I really enjoy what she writes. It's really significant, the work that she does for this population.
Who was that, Diane?
Carly Friedman. Yep.
Yeah. Actually, I think both Carly Friedman and Laura Van Pembroke are OTs. But Carly Friedman is the
CARLI, I think, Katrina. She's in Maryland, I think, in Townsend. Yeah, but yeah, I'm thinking I'd like to invite her to the Golisano Fellowship in June of 24 to present on social determinants of health in this population. Yeah.
She's with CQL, Council for Quality. And I put the correct spelling for Laura Van Pembroke in the chat, Katrina.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
You're
you
not-
That's a lot different than I thought.
Yeah, you're
you
not
know,
even particularly close.
yeah, isn't that been a challenge, Katrina? Quinnipiac?
Yeah. There we go. Okay.
I take it new business. Do people know that there's a call out from NIH for proposals to address ableism to do in November. NIH has now said they are having there's open discussion that they're gonna change their mission statement, and they've got an open call for discussion till the end of November sometime. That's out right now. So I assume people know that there's been critique that the mission statement of NIH is ableist. That's not new. That's been around for a while. And there was a report last, maybe about December a year ago, about things that there was a committee to try to address difficulties with NIH and ableism. That was Lisa Iazzoni and
Carly?
Bonnie Lynn Sweener and some others that were on it. And the mission statement was discussed there, that being one of the issues that they want to change. So apparently the NIH is now taking that up, and they're having there's an open forum for discussion right now, or comments to their website, or to the link that they've got.
I think the
We
link
can-
was in our latest newsletter.
Yeah, it was, right. So is there any other new business? Katrina's going to give a wet update to our website.
I'm just going to stop sharing the agenda for a second. Okay.
And this is Joan. I put in the social determinants of health index from the website.
Thank you.
Oh,
You're
thanks.
welcome.
Okay. I'm just going to walk everybody through our latest social media and web performance report. We've been focusing on every month different topics that are being discussed, kind of either because there's a monthly observance or a weekly observance of different things that are adjacent to the work that we're doing. So for example, August was Indigenous communities. And so we focused on disabilities among Indigenous communities, as well as accessibility and outdoor recreation. And the content around Native and Indigenous communities performed really well. People were really excited to find that information, especially a toolkit about that was created by the national, oh boy, I can't remember the exact name of the department, but Native American, it was a health bureau that works with Native Americans, and they created a toolkit for working with intellectual and developmental disabilities within the Native American culture. In September, we're focusing on World Alzheimer's Month, National Hispanic Heritage Month, which just started on the 15th, Healthy Aging Month, and we're just kind of, through all of them, we're focusing on how people with disabilities can deal with climate change and be prepared to respond to natural disasters, because unfortunately that's becoming a more common, frequent thing that people are exposed to. So these are our LinkedIn stats. So, you know, impressions go up and down, but our followers have increased month to month steadily. So right now we're at 172. If you're not already following us on LinkedIn, please give us a follow. This was some of our most popular content from August. Sarah was featured in an interview with Catholic Charities from Kansas City. And there was an article about how expensive it is to be disabled in the United States, and both of those performed really well. Twitter has been up and down. There's a lot of changes happening with Twitter right now. They've changed, the name of Twitter has changed to X, but every place that I've seen it referenced, it's been called X, formerly known as Twitter, which is a mouthful. So we're just going to keep calling it Twitter until they update their branding. And so the posts that we've been doing, we've tried different numbers of posts, and it hasn't really impacted the number of impressions that we get, at least not directly. We do have 42 followers, and we get a pretty good engagement rate, but it's not really certain where Twitter's going to go over the next year or so. It may turn into a paid service. It may continue to sort of shift audience wise, as it's doing now, to focusing on more paid members than free users, which means that their content gets promoted over free users, which we are. And it causes confusion on the website. It also causes a lot of disinformation to get put out there. So time will tell whether that's still a reliable platform for us to use. This was one of our most popular tweets. We tweeted an article from Minority Rights. They held an event where they could have a conversation with integrating marginalized communities and identifying best practices in health and social research. So that was a really great article if you want to check it out. Facebook. We don't have a lot of followers on Facebook. We only have 26, but we love all 26 so much. So if you are on Facebook and you have not followed IDD Health Equity, give us a follow. Our reach and engagement, it remains pretty steady, but we don't see a lot of activity yet. This was one of our most popular posts. It was about helping people that have disabilities find success and belonging outside. And a lot of that was about making sure that trails and outdoor experiences are accessible, not just physically accessible, but also for people that may have learning disabilities or have a difficult time accessing information about the outdoor opportunities in their area. In August, we added a new video to YouTube. And we got one more subscriber. So we have 9 subscribers on YouTube. Very exciting. If you haven't seen the latest video, it's Dee talking about her healthcare experiences. It's a really great video, and you can watch it on our YouTube channel, or you can go to the website and access it there. Our newsletter is doing really well. We have a good open rate, a little bit higher than the industry benchmark. We're doing better than our MailChimp peers. MailChimp is the service we use to send out the newsletter. The click-through rate is just what it sounds like, people opening the newsletter and then clicking on a story. And the top links that we saw people clicking on were the pilot preview page, that's what it was, the National Indian Council on Aging. That was the organization that made the Native American Disability Toolkit. And then the upcoming, I think it's past now, Nexus IPE Summit that Sarah was and some of the other core partners were presenting at. On the website, the most popular pages are the homepage, our own voices, and high impact learning activities. Most visitors still come to the website via a saved URL or a bookmark, but 21% arrive by clicking a link in the newsletter. And top search terms include Health Equity Consortium, IDD, and developmental disabilities. We made 2 new pages. and I will share those with you in just a second. But they're to highlight the different types of learning experiences that have been created in the pilot projects. So let me see if I can open this. So on this page, we have organizations that are using simulations with people with IDD as standardized patients. At UT Health, this is not one of our pilots, but it's one of the organizations that collaborate, that we have worked with on the project. They have a disaster simulation with standardized patients that have IDD. And then, as Sarah mentioned, this is the IPE medical simulation at University of Illinois. And then we have another one from University of Oklahoma, and then the Villanova program. And then clicking on any of these will take you to find more information about the program. So this is the Villanova one, and you can download the Villanova presentation if you want to look at the PDF, or you can watch the YouTube video of the presentation that was, I can't remember which committee it was given to, but it's recorded there and you can kind of review it at your leisure. And then the other one is this new page on online learning and virtual experiences. We have the Advanced Interprofessional E-Service Learning Experience, aka IEL at Rush. And then we have the Interprofessional Core Curriculum for the IDD workforce, and this needs to be updated to reflect the new Special Olympics super fancy version of the program. And then the self-advocates and family advocates at University of Oklahoma. And this is one of the most popular pages is this pilot projects page. And so what you can do here is you can look at these different tags and then sort the projects by that. So if you wanted to just look at didactic learning, you could click on that and it would give you the ones that it would give you programs that included that kind of straightforward classroom type learning. So summary, LinkedIn remains the leader among our platforms, and people consistently share stuff from our page or to our page on LinkedIn. The newsletter is super effective at boosting website traffic, and traffic to the pilot project webpage and individual pilot pages continues to grow, which is good because the more people learn about the projects, the more they may want to integrate it into their own practice at their universities. And that is my report for August.
I have a question. Sarah and I have been asked to write an editorial for the Research in Nursing and Health journal on health equity for people with IDD.
Mm-hmm.
And in the section, that we're working on right now, that it's identifying resources that faculty can use to integrate content. So is there a way that we could link this fabulous information on simulations, standardized patients, all of this work? Is it possible? I guess I'm asking you and Sarah, could we provide a link in our editorial? So it's not just enough to say, that we really have a lot of hard work to do in order to get people to begin to think about disability education in their curriculum. And at the same time, the biggest barrier really is that there aren't faculty who are prepared to do this. But if we begin to identify resources that people can use, such as the work with PATH, I think that's a step in the right direction. So is that something we could do? Katrina and Sarah, just link to this in our editorial?
Yeah, it depends on the publication. Some of them are more supportive of outgoing links than others.
Okay.
But yeah, whatever you wanted, or if you needed like a new page made or something like that provided specific content, I could do that as well.
Okay, so you and I can talk offline about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just have to go to the page on instructions for authors for research in nursing and health, and then we can talk about it. But providing people with resources rather than just saying we've got work to do, but here are some of the resources makes possible that people are going to begin to adopt this.
All right, and now I think it's Renata. Renata, I think you're up.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share the results from process we conducted called the Participatory Planning and Decision-Making Groups. And just to give a little context around that, as I'm sharing my slides, I hope I'm got the right slides up. Yeah, I think so. So the context of this is Sarah earlier mentioned that we have submitted the scoping review focused on various training and curricula for people who are working with young adults or adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And when we did the literature review, as you can imagine, there were a lot of articles, and we wanted to, in addition to writing the scoping review, we wanted to pull out the main themes and get some feedback in real time from different stakeholders. So this is the context. The method that we use, the PPDM process, is a standard process. It's a mixed methods approach, and it's used to solicit feedback on themes identified in the literature or in Delphi studies. So some of the themes Sarah already mentioned, but the themes that we pulled out of this literature review process, and we'll repeat those on the other slides a little bit, but just a big picture. So was the training or activity or curriculum designed as interprofessional? Was a big theme. Another one was to do with how the training was developed. Another one was if there was a model of disability that was explicitly stated that was other than medical, which not a lot. Were people with disabilities involved in the development of research in the articles that we reviewed? Were family members involved? Were issues of diversity explicitly stated? And were pedagogical approaches explicitly stated? And then we also had a theme of theoretical model explicitly stated, but we did not rate that one in this particular process. So, just to give you a sense who were the respondents in this process, we had 5 stakeholder groups. We had students in healthcare and related fields. They were all graduate students in medicine or in nursing. We had family members of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, professionals from dentistry, nursing, medicine, OT, and gerontology. We had faculty member from nursing and gerontology. We also had people with disabilities. I will mention some qualitative points out of that. We couldn't quite get the quantitative data from them. So you don't have to look at all these bars. I'm just going to do some highlights here. So the first group were students, graduate students, and what we asked them to do was rate the importance of the themes in relation to potentially in the future developing and implementing curricula for professionals who would be working with this population. And then we had a discussion. And so you can see just some highlights. The theme that was rated the highest by the student group was the involvement of people with disabilities in development of or research in these curricula. Now, this was said in the context of the students highlighted that in their program, there was not a mention. This is specifically to the University of Minnesota. There was not a mention of people with intellectual developmental disabilities, and they were kind of focusing how best, how best to learn and include the population in their study materials. The one student we had from Rush University, she was exposed to some material, of course, about this population. So she had a slightly different take, but she also felt that this category was the most important. The least important for the students was the pedagogical approach explicitly stated that was being used. And you will see that theme across the stakeholder groups. They felt like as long as the content was delivered, it didn't really matter how. For family members, I would say the highest rated, and this was on a scale from 0 to 100, just to put it into context. Probably, and there were a lot of high categories. So issues of diversity were brought up quite a bit. Involvement of family members in developing these curricula also, and also just the fact that these curricula are being developed. The family members did feel as critical. In this group, we didn't have an extensive conversation about diversity, and that went beyond including people with IDD. It went to racial, ethnic, gender, and such. So they saw this as critical. So professionals were people working in the fields, as I indicated earlier, dentistry, nursing, gerontology. Here they also felt there was a great need of the development of these curricula. There was a discussion in this group around that there is really not a need for a common definition of interprofessional curriculum, for example, as much as understanding the roles of these professionals and other stakeholders having in these IPE initiatives. There was also an interesting discussion in this group about whether people with disabilities, as they are involved in the development of these curricula, whether they should be paid or not. And there was people were saying, well, if other people have a choice, whether they want to get a honorarium or some sort of a remuneration for participation, people with IDD should have that choice as well. So that was quite interesting. And in this group, you can also see that they did not put a lot of emphasis on the importance of pedagogical approach explicitly stated in delivery of these curricula. Faculty, so these were various levels of faculty members. They saw everything as important, as you can see, minus maybe the pedagogical approach. Their highest was the involvement of people with disabilities in the development of the curricula. They also talked about the importance of understanding the roles in the IPE initiatives, not as much as the definition. So there was quite a bit of similarity with professionals, with the faculty. I'm not going to bore you with this, but I'm just going to show you the overall averages here for the themes that we discussed. So the highest overall was everybody saw the development of new curricula focused on how to work with people with IDD as important. Involvement of people with disabilities, family members is critical. Focus on diversity issues is critical. And the use of a specific pedagogical approach is the least important, even though, of course, they saw it as something to pay attention to as well. Now, one thing I'm going to say, we did not collect quantitative data from people with disabilities themselves. I did review the notes again, and really the common theme there was around treating the person with a disability as a whole. So there was a concern around having really splintered services and the professionals not communicating among each other, and then people with disabilities being sort of pushed around from one professional to the other, not understanding what's wrong, what needs to be addressed, where to go next, where are these people. And so really having a holistic, somehow approach that is well thought out, that would be accessible to this population, was the largest conversation, at plus minus others. So I am working on a report of this process, combining the quantitative and qualitative results. And then, of course, that report will include recommendations. This particular product is kind of a part of a suite with the scoping review that we hope to get back soon for revisions, and other work that Sarah at Rush is doing and our colleagues on the PATH project. So with that, I will open it up for questions and comments.
Renata, I wanted to ask, was there any finding that surprised you?
Yeah, so I think, this is really the same finding as we had in the scoping review, which is how little emphasis there is in either in the written materials or even thought that gets considered around the issue of diversity. And that includes the population samples in the studies. It includes the problem, not a problem as in that sense, but like an issue of diversity. So that is just not even in the conversation. I also was a little bit surprised that people really didn't see the type of pedagogical approach as an issue, but I think maybe that comes later when there actually is something to discuss and to deliver. So that makes sense. And yeah, I think what was very clear from the findings was that people with disabilities have to be included in the conversations and in the design. So that was pretty loud and clear.
Other question I have is related to the feedback from students. So as I remember, the students were graduate students, right?
Yeah.
So do you think that's why research was kind of top on their list? Had it been undergraduate students, they might have identified a different priority. But we recognize that we immerse our graduate students in the whole idea of research, right? So,
yeah, I think so. And from my own experience, and probably from yours as well. So at the undergraduate level, the students still don't quite know what to focus on, what are the big issues, what are the small issues. And so at the graduate level, the students did really see the lack of exposure, especially at the University of Minnesota, to this population as shocking. And they were seeking out, actually, the students at our place, they were seeking out information about the population when they realized that they were not exposed to anything throughout their training. And this is medical school. And of course, I have been working with the medical school, how to make this better, but it's going through these various groups and levels, and they just can't decide what they're going to adopt, and it's just such a long process. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's like herding cats, right? Working with faculty,
exactly,
right?
and the different departments, and
yeah. And I think, from what I read and what we've talked about too, that often, the approach is one and done. Have a panel of people, of self-advocates, and that's it, right?
Well, and that's, you've heard me talk about this before, so I won't go into that, but it's a huge issue when they really honestly believe that if I bring a self-advocate who is going to talk for 20 minutes and we leave, that's it for the year, they think that's just fine.
They've checked the box.
Check the box.
Yeah. And then they send them an electronic gift card, and that they are surprised that they haven't got it because they don't understand how to download it. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, so that's I think it's, you know, as much as the findings, it's really good material for conversation and recommendations.
I did get a chance to look at what we wrote in the article. Actually, it was only 1/3 of articles discussed programs that were interprofessional, and only 1/3 discussed things that were competency based, which is pretty low.
Yeah,
Really.
and so that was another thing. So the common theme across the groups was that it was not important to have a common definition of IPE, which surprised me a little bit. And they talked about the importance of defining roles, and they also talked about the importance of having IP competencies. So that's they did see that as important.
I think also, you know, that we're really beginning to move into this notion of competency-based education. It's not that we haven't talked about it, but it's becoming, I think, more and more, the emphasis is growing, and certainly in nursing, you know, that we're adopting competency-based education models, and you know, and there are some articles on it. So it might be we asked the question too soon. We look, you know, on competency based, that maybe a year or two from now we'd find very different answers in terms of the integration of a competency based model into, you know, our thinking about how we educate the future students. So
Yeah, that reminds me. So, you know, I work a
Discussion in
lot of
medicine since the 90s, late 90s, about competency based. I don't think it got into sort of full, but they've also they've had it for a while. I'm not a,
yeah, but it's not pervasive. It's not everywhere.
not.
It's just no. Yeah.
There was also a conversation about, and this is what the competencies reminded me, direct support professionals, and how the professionals, especially in the group, talked about they don't know much about what direct support professionals do, what their competencies are. So there's a gap between the people who directly work with these individuals on a daily basis versus the professionals in the healthcare field.
National Alliance for DSPs has been pushing for competency-based training.
Yep, that's right.
Sometime.
And there are some trainings around that.
Have we had any connection with IPAC, which is the interprofessional education? Interprofessional education group
Collaborative
out of DC?
Yes, you know, we at the beginning in the first year we had meetings with them, consultation meetings. That was part of our we had money for that in the grant, and we have a poster at the NCIPE conference. Actually, we've had one every year, so we've had attendance at those conferences and some connection with them. Yes.
So I'm not sure we're talking about the same group. I'm talking about IPAC, which is located in Washington, D.C.
Oh, no, no. I'm thinking the people that are located in Minnesota.
Yeah, because this is a group of, I think, 24 interprofessional. They represent interprofessional organizations, and they have fellows and workshops, et cetera. And so now that this new IPAC, this interprofessional curriculum is out there, it might be worth exposure to this group. These are the leaders of all the interdisciplinary associations.
Right, and if I'm not mistaken, they just came out with a new draft set of competencies.
Yes, they did. They're general. They're, teamwork and communication and things like that. But I think the specificity of this is important enough that group might be very interested in hearing the presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be. I think we should. That's a good suggestion.
Yeah. Has the Alliance met with them to talk about the interprofessional competencies? No?
No, not that I know
No.
of.
Yeah, because that seems like a gap. I mean, that's really significant work that the Alliance, has done on interprofessional education for the IDD population. It's well thought up with its competency, subcompetencies, principles, values, all of that. It's so nicely prepared. Maybe offline we can talk about, that.
This is Janet. I'm going to ask a question that may make it appear that I've paid no attention to our meetings the entire time I've been a part of them. But when we say interprofessional education, are you talking about weaving in together like physicians and nurses learning together? Or are we taking a course that will be applicable to occupational therapists, medical students, nursing students? When we say interprofessional, how is this interprofessional? Is that a stupid question?
No, I think it's a very
It's not a stupid question at all.
I can tell you, Janet, that in terms of nursing accreditation, our national accreditation, the definition of interprofessional is exactly what you first suggested, is that, different professions come together and learn together and perhaps practice together through simulation or team roundings. However you do it, it's the notion of team and the sharing of the different perspectives. And that's required key element, I'm going to say, in nursing accreditation. But talking about it is a lot easier than doing it.
And so while there was an interesting article about where is it, across the country, because while all the different bodies require it, it's not real specific of what that means. I think in the Future of Nursing report, it basically says if you have some classes in simulation, that's probably enough. But the considered best practices if you have an interprofessional education and practice experience, not just didactic. But it varies. Some programs are going to have a class that they might teach interprofessional. Some will have simulation that's interprofessional. Some have full-blown, at practice experiences. It can vary in time. It's a class, it's a whole course, it's whatever. It's across the board. There's a lot of variation. But I think the meaning is it's actually across the board interprofessional. So not just medicine and nursing, but OT, chaplain services, all those certain, a part of it. But like I said, what people do, I can try to find it. There was kind of a review of what was happening across the country. What was the state of things? And it's
you have time in your busy schedule to find that for me, that'd be great. I was curious.
I've got it in my file somewhere because I've cited it, so it shouldn't be that hard to find.
All righty, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, for us, we have like 17 different programs, I think, at Rush, and they all have to, it's mandatory for all of them. So it goes from, imaging sciences, vascular technology, whatever, they're all in the same group.
Yeah. At Fisher, At Fisher, our definition was nursing, pharmacy, and mental health, because those were the three and by the way, pharmacy requires IPE as well as nursing. I don't know, other professions actually required as part of their accreditation. When it's required as part of accreditation, then movement happens.
Something happens. Something happens.
Something happens. All right. This is great, meeting, lots to discuss. Great work that's happened so far in our grant. And I want to thank Renata for sharing, and for all of you for asking, I think, very provocative questions. For example, what is IPE, and and how about also how do we, what is the word, amplify our influence by getting our information out to different groups. So I know we're past 11. I already got a text message saying, "Where are you for my 11 o'clock meetings?"
For the next meeting.
But once again, thank you, and we'll be Katrina will be in contact with suggestion for a new model for scheduling our meetings next year or two. Anything else that people want to add? But all right. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.